Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Walpole Business Spotlight Show. My name is Harry Brusades, and I'm the host of the show, as well as the president of the Chamber of Commerce here in Walpole. The show is brought to you through the efforts of the Chamber and Walpole Public Television. Today, my guest is attorney Danielle Huntley of Walpole. Business is located in Walpole?
Yes.
Okay, very nice to have you on the show today.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here.
So, Danielle, your specialty in law is immigration.
Correct.
So if you could just give us a little summary right off the bat as far as your practice goes.
Sure. So I help individuals, families, businesses of all sizes, and folks who want to invest in the United States. So our immigration system is very complex. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And as everyone knows, it's a very hot topic right now. And so I help anyone who really wants to start something or move to the United States.
Now, when you went to law school, I assume you had to cover a wide variety of law. What made you focus on the immigration part of it?
I actually just fell into immigration law. After law school, I was, looking for a job, working my way around doing all sorts of stuff, and I fell into it. I just was in the right place at the right time and seized an opportunity and really fell in love with immigration law. My favorite thing is that I really help people build their American dream. It's amazing how much people want to come here, live here, bring their families here and start businesses here. It's really, it sounds kind of corny, but it's really, inspiring, and it's hugely gratifying for me and for my clients.
So is it, when you say you've kind of fell into the immigration part, was that with your experience as an associate attorney at Lateef?
Yes,
okay.
yes.
So that was that they kind of
Yeah, so I worked
on
there for several years,
Okay.
with a very experienced lawyer. My colleague Larry is an incredible immigration lawyer, and we worked together for many years. And I just learned, and worked with everyone from super sophisticated billion-dollar companies from India starting a new office here in the United States to, pro bono work for people fleeing political oppression, coming to the United States seeking freedom through our asylum process. So every case is unique, and that's what's really fun about it. There's no 2 days are alike, no two clients are alike. Everything is different, and so it makes it hugely interesting.
So a big part of the show is to bring, business owners or professionals or entrepreneurs, attorneys like yourself, into the spotlight for our general viewing public. And our public are able to get to know the people on the show. And it's more about, getting to know, like, and trust them so they can use you or a business owner for their services. So tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure.
So I guess you went to Boston College?
I did. I spent a lot of time at Boston College. I loved it so much I stayed for law school.
Okay.
So I'm a double legal, and BC was a wonderful place. I really learned a lot. I'm still in touch with a lot of my professors. It was a place that Boston College's motto is men and women for others. And, I think that's something in my profession that I get to do. I get to help people, and that's wonderful. That's such a gift and a blessing to be a part of people's lives. It's a real gift. So I went to Boston College Law School, had a lot of fun, studied really hard, and then have been building my legal career, and have done all sorts of things related to immigration and just being involved in the community. So, like, for instance, here in Walpole, I'm a new member of the Chamber, which I was very excited to join, and I'm a parishioner and a cantor over at St. Mary's in East Walpole, and I'm on the board of directors there too. So Walpole is a great place to be, and it's a wonderful business community.
Did you get your ashes yet today?
I didn't get my ashes yet today.
Today is Ash Wednesday, just for everybody else. So I love always trying to, when I'm asking questions, just to be the common person.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we think about immigration, I guess the first thought is we think about the sitcoms of the story of, like, I need to marry you so I can stay in the country and do we have any children, or what color do you like? What's your favorite food?
Yeah.
You know? So I guess let's start with there's a U.S. citizen and they meet somebody that's here, whether they're a student or they're visiting, and then that person ends up staying for a while, and they get together and then they get married. Okay, how does that person go through the immigration process?
So the first thing you got to do is get married.
You have to get married. Okay.
You have to get married.
Okay.
If someone's here in the United States, to apply for them, you already have to be married. If they're abroad, let's say they had to go home for whatever reason, you can apply for a fiancé visa. But if they're here in the United States, you can get married and then apply for a green card for your spouse. And that is immediately available. There's no waiting line. It generally takes anywhere from 6 months to a year. And there are ways in the interim to get travel and work permission, because one of the biggest questions I get asked whenever someone comes to me for a consultation or wants to kind of figure out what should I do for my family, what should I do, is how do I work? Because people need to work to support their families. And so that's one of the things I work with my clients to do, is to make sure that they have work permission as quickly as possible so that they're not worried about it. So once people get married, we file the application, and generally within 6 months, we have an interview. And the interview, particularly for people who just got married, is really fun. They ask things like, what side of the bed is the alarm clock on? Do you have an alarm clock? What'd you get for your last birthday? What was the last date you went on? And they'll interview the couple separately. And then they'll match up the answers to see if you really know each other. And it's been funny, it makes clients nervous, but it's also funny when you're sitting in the interview and they start squirming, particularly because guys often can't remember this stuff. So it's just, it's funny knowing my clients and knowing that they're really married, they live together. I've interacted with them for months, and here they are trying to remember, well, what side of the bed is the alarm clock? And now people don't have alarm clocks, they have phones. So it's a fun process.
So that's one example. I guess the other example would be somebody that just wants to come from France, let's say, and just wants to be here and work here. So are they able to just get a green card while they're in France to come over?
No. So there are only two ways to get a green card. There's one through family. So mostly that's spouses, children, parents, and siblings. The second way is through employment. And that is very tricky. Generally, you have to be a professional. You have to be sponsored by a company. So you have to find a company here in the United States who's willing to hire you and go through the green card process for you, which is very lengthy and expensive. For someone from France, if they have enough money and the business ability, they can start a business in the United States and come to the US through that. But that's a pretty heavy, intense process, because you have to actually start a business and have the money to invest and do that. So it's not very easy. The only people who are able to self-sponsor, so basically say, I'm going to apply for work permission right off the bat without any help from a company, are people who've like won the Nobel Prize. So people who are hugely successful. I'm oversimplifying it a bit, but it's generally pretty hard to get work permission to come to the United States if you're not married to an American or coming through family.
Interesting. So again, if I had this lifelong dream from Greece, I was born in Greece, and I wanted to always come to the United States to become a citizen, I wouldn't be able to do that unless I had a job or unless some family member preceded me and had some established credentials.
Yeah, and it's for instance, like let's say you had a brother and he was in the United States. You would have to wait. The wait is close to 10 to 15 years with waiting for a U.S. citizen to petition for their sibling. So it's an incredibly long wait. For folks from the Philippines, when I started practicing law, when I was a lawyer, freshly minted, a baby lawyer, as we like to call ourselves, the line for siblings of people from the Philippines, because there's so many people from the Philippines who want to come here, was in the 1980s. Wow. So it was when I was in kindergarten. that's when they were processing applications from. And that's because for certain family members, not spouses, not children, not parents, if you're from a certain country, China, the Philippines, India, or Mexico, so many people from those countries want to come here that there's a line for them. And they end up waiting in an even longer line because there are just too many people from those countries who want to come, and there are quotas.
So legally, how many people are let in? Is it 1 million?
So
is that what the quota is?
So it depends for each visa. I don't know the exact numbers off the top of my head, largely because what governs it is something called the Visa Bulletin, and that says the government is processing applications as of, let's say, January 1st, 2005. And so basically you take the day you applied and wait for that bulletin to get to your date. So it's really a waiting game.
While you're in the other country.
While you're in the other country.
Right. Okay. So again, if we've heard that allowance is $1 million legally per year, so what about the people that do show up here illegally? Once they're here, the process has been that they're able to work, but they're working illegally and undocumented with no social security number. So if they're found, then they potentially are deported.
Correct.
But aren't there a lot of people that are still, like in Massachusetts, they're getting a license, they are working, they are paying taxes somehow without a social security number, right?
So how that works is often people who are working here illegally are either using a fake social security number, they're borrowing a social security number from someone. It's been documented in some communities that 30 people are using the same social security number because the way that the government monitors who employers hire is not very thorough, and it's not very complete or effective. So people just really need a social security number, show up, have an ID, and certain employers don't care. As long as you can show them that you have a social security number and an ID, they're happy to do it.
So those individuals are really just, trying to work under the radar and hopefully not get caught.
Correct.
They're never going to get to that point of applying for a green card.
They could if they marry a U.S. citizen.
That would be the only way.
That would really be the only way.
All right.
And the other thing I wanted to correct on the limitations, like the number of people, there is no limit to how many people who are married to a U.S. citizen or are children of a U.S. citizen or parents of a U.S. citizen who can come to the United States. Everybody else, there are limitations.
Sure. And so the other way to come in is like through H-1 work visas, which is more of a temporary status, right? I mean, green card is temporary, but more
there
permanent.
are only two types of people who come into the United States: immigrants. And an immigrant is someone who has a green card or is a legal permanent resident of the United States. Those three words mean the exact same thing. The other type of people are what we call non-immigrants, and they're coming here for temporary reasons. It could be work, it could be they're coming on vacation, they're a diplomat, they're a doctor coming to train in the US, they're a student. And so all of the kind of like alphabet soup of B visas and F visas and J visas and M visas and, XYZ, it'll make your head spin, the number of visas that we have. Those all fall into a non-immigrant category. And those are all temporary visas. So the only people who have permanent permission to work in the United States and permanent permission to live in the United States, so they don't have an expiration date, are people who have a green card or are a permanent resident of the United States.
So when you say live, so I know in the mortgage industry, people are allowed to get mortgages and buy homes with H-1 work visas, as long as they've established income and they show tax returns for like 2 years here, and they've also established a credit report. So they're still considered, they could be sent out.
Their status could expire.
But they still own a home.
Correct.
It's just that they're gone, I guess.
Correct.
Then they'd have to try to come back in. It would be one of those.
Right.
I know one client had to go back out to Canada for a day and then come back in for whatever reason.
Yeah, so for people with H-1B visas, there's a 6-year limit on them, unless you're waiting for a green card. Mm-hmm. There's some ways to extend it if you have a green card application pending. But if you don't have a green card, your status expires at some point. Sometimes you can renew it indefinitely, but a lot of them have limits.
Mm-hmm. So I know when we've talked in the past, you've talked about representing everyone in the spectrum.
Yeah.
Whether that be high net worth individuals or people that, again, are maybe on the asylum side of things, or refugee, I guess it might be the same thing. So when it comes to, just to ask that question, cost structure, there's a wide variety based upon what the work that you have to do.
Correct.
And the research and how long you have to go to court, I guess. But I know the simplest of things, some people might think, oh, it's just forms. I can fill them out and submit it and they'll give me my answer. So let's just touch base on that and what you would charge for representation and why it's so important.
So every immigration case is different. And one of the biggest misconceptions about immigration is that it's about forms. So as a U.S. citizen, when I get my U.S. passport, I literally sit down, I fill out my name, where was I born, my date of birth, who my parents were, and what my address is. The most annoying part of the whole process is going to the post office to sign it in front of the post office guy. So the problem is that gives U.S. citizens and people who have dealt with the passport office the idea that immigration is only about forms. And while the forms are really important, you're not hiring a lawyer to fill out forms. Obviously I fill them out for my clients, but that's 1%. 1% of the knowledge behind the forms, because behind the forms is the law, so the U.S. code, the regulations, which change all the time. And then behind the regulations, there are things like executive orders. So the things that the president does, some of which are not all reported on. So there are memorandums that are issued by immigration, by the different agencies, and the press doesn't cover them. So, I kind of tell people you rely on Google to your peril. And unfortunately, with immigration, once you've created a problem, maybe, and it may be an innocent problem. You weren't trying to screw things up. You weren't trying to make a mistake. But once you get the momentum of the immigration system against you, it's not impossible to fix, but it becomes far more expensive, far more complicated, and far more time consuming. So for instance, for someone who's marrying a US citizen, I would charge them a flat fee. And that flat fee would depend on, are there any complicating circumstances? I generally have an initial phone call with a client to kind of figure out what's going on and let them know what my fees would be. I like to be very upfront with clients about, this is exactly what you can expect. The problem is when those same people decide, oh, we'll just do it ourselves, and then they mess it up. And at that point, they may not be looking at a flat fee. They may be looking at something where they're going to be writing me a retainer check and looking at an hourly spend just because, who knows?
Right.
Because they've created a mess, innocently or not. It's something that, this is what I tell people. Your ability to live with your family or work in the United States, what's that worth to you? What's it worth to you to not have to worry about it, to have someone else take care of it for you?
Sure.
I think it's really important for people to have good immigration counsel because it means, that someone's watching out for you and making sure that you get what you deserve, because it's important to be able to live here and work here.
Absolutely. So, you had invited me to a meeting of one of your volunteer working scenarios, and it was with the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance.
Yes.
And before we talk about that, though, there was a senator from Arizona there, and there was a lot of questions that were posed to him, and some were on immigration, and I'm not sure if you asked them or not, or somebody else did. But two things I thought were very interesting from that, and I'd like to get your personal opinion on both, I guess. So one was, and you might have touched on this, and I'm not sure if this is the one, the EB5 investor visas.
Yes.
So that is a certain criteria where people give $500,000 and now they're in the country, or $1 million if they decide where they want it to go. Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, so the EB5 visa.
Because what I garnered from that was you're buying your way in.
You are, yes.
So I found that a little discriminating to a certain extent. Just my own person. So
Yeah.
here you got the average Joe from Greece that's trying to come in, but then the guy with $1 million from France is allowed to come in because he's got $1 million.
Yeah.
So just tell me a little bit about that.
So it was designed as a vehicle to promote foreign investment in the United States. So, for instance, there's kind of two ways to do it. You can invest $1 million in a troubled business, and what you have to show is that your investment in this business either saved or created 10 jobs for Americans. And then the $500,000 level is where you invest in a project, some type of business project, in a targeted employment area. And that targeted employment area is a place with low employment, or
like Idaho, they said, or
like
something.
Idaho, Iowa, Vermont.
Sure.
And if you invest $500,000 and you can show in your project that you invest in that you've generated 10 jobs with your investment.
Even with the 5 or the million?
Correct.
Okay.
It's tied to job creation.
So that investment goes in. Let's just say the jobs are created for a short period of time. They could then go away at a certain point. But does that person get to take their money back out, that investment back out?
There does have to be a way. The money is always invested at risk. So it could,
go away just because the company goes away.
Yeah, it could go away just because the company goes away, the project fails.
They're
Who
an
knows?
actual shareholder of that company.
Correct.
So that money could turn into $2 million.
Correct.
Okay.
And most of them are not actively involved in the business. The vast majority of folks who use the EB5 visa are investing in these targeted employment areas. So they're investing in these regional centers. They're $500,000, and they're inactive. They're an inactive partner.
Yeah.
And a lot of where we're seeing successful EB5 projects are as mezzanine level funding for giant construction projects. So the Hudson Yards in New York, there are a whole bunch of projects, particularly in the New York City area, that they've been used in real estate development.
So when was that originated? When did that come about?
1990.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's an interesting visa, because I too kind of, should people be able to buy their way in? I think people investing in the U.S. economy is a good thing.
Sure.
I think also from a competitive standpoint, Canada has a program.
If
the UK has a program.
If we're doing the right things here, they can invest in our country, in our businesses anyway, through the exchange system.
They can, but the problem is they can't come here. So that's they can't come here.
Well,
so that's what's hard, particularly because if you remember when we first started talking, I talked about representing people who invest in the United States. So the only people who are able to invest in the United States and come here to manage that investment, it's called an e-visa. And those are based on treaties. So like, for instance, our treaty with the United Kingdom, this is the actual treaty that's used for folks from the United Kingdom to invest in the United States. The treaty is dated 1813.
Wow.
So
the War of 1812.
Yeah,
so
right after the War of 1812. I just think that's a fun fact.
Sure.
And we have other treaties from these countries that are not that old, but close, from the early 1900s, late 1800s, but we don't have a treaty like that with China or India or Russia. And these folks have a lot of money to invest, and they'd like to be able to come to the United States, so it's a way to do that. But other countries, developed nations like the United States, are competing for these investors. Canada has this program. The United Kingdom has this program. Australia. People are really competing for these dollars.
So we still have a little time, but I don't want to get off topic too much. But I know the senator also mentioned an example of his father, and he had a medical issue, and how he went and saw one doctor, and that doctor was from India, and then to another specialty doctor, and that doctor was from the Philippines,
Yeah.
and they were all foreign doctors, but they were experts in their field.
Yes.
And that question that I've always asked myself, it's great for us that we're getting the best of the best, but sometimes I wonder, the best of the best might be better served in their countries to develop those countries. I also think it's great if they come here and get experience and learn, but go back and help the countries that they're from. I guess, where do you lie personally on, when is it more beholden to them to develop their country and their education and their medicine and all that, so they have a better life and they have a better economy and they have a better environment? I don't know, just as a quick, I know it's a tough question.
It's a hard one. It's a hard one because, I also, I don't know what their particular life circumstances are. So I don't know, what would their life be like if they had to go back to their home country? It's tough.
Sure.
It's tough. I think those particular doctors were probably here through a program where they go to underserved medical areas.
Okay.
So most doctors who immigrate to the United States do so through a program where they serve underserved medical areas. So there are vast parts of the United States that don't have specialists. They just don't. This is not one of them. We live in one of the medical capitals of the world. But places like Tennessee, probably parts of Arizona, they just don't have enough doctors. But I totally see your point. It's a tough one. It's a tough one. I don't have a good answer for you.
We did have a couple questions for today, and I think I did address most of them. But I think we hit on a lot of great things here, and we did touch on most of this stuff. Before I go into the new administration, and maybe we'll finish with that, let's do some fun stuff.
Okay.
So, first of all, I see that are you also fluent in French?
Oui, un petit peu.
Okay. Very good. I was going to test you. And then I see that you have some other hobbies or interests. And those are immigration. Yeah, yay.
Yeah.
Okay. This fountain pens.
I love fountain pens. I'm a huge nerd.
Okay.
I just love. I worked at a stationery store all through high school and college, and the woman there was into calligraphy, and I just fell in love with fountain pens. I use them. I have them.
What was the name of it?
The Right Place in Andover, Massachusetts.
I remember there was a national chain that a bunch of people used to work at that was always in the malls. The name escapes me. But anyway, so all just cool fountains. Do you have a collection?
I do. I have a bunch. I use them every day. I have fountain. My purse is over there on the other side of the studio, and I have, I think, 2 or 3 in there.
Really?
And I just enjoy writing with them. I write all the time. I take notes, meeting with people, meeting with clients, and it just makes it fun. And you can, I have hundreds of different types of inks, and it's just fun.
And then you've got quilting on here?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
The last quilt I finished was a wedding quilt for one of my best friends, and it had 7,200 individual pieces in it.
Wow. And then lastly, we have politics.
Yes.
So I know that you're very interested in politics. And again, just a quick plug for the Mass Fiscal Alliance.
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that real quick.
So the Massachusetts Fiscal Alliance is a fiscally conservative organization. And our real impetus is promoting good government and promoting laws and regulations promoting a climate that helps businesses of all sizes, because ultimately we believe that a strong economy benefits everyone in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, from those who are struggling financially to those who are already doing well. And I think, Massachusetts can sometimes have what feels like an unfriendly attitude towards small businesses, which are the real engine of economic growth.
Absolutely. Not to hold you there, but we are getting out of time. So again, and that's right to my final theme of the show.
Yeah.
We are, it's all about promoting small businesses, promoting individuals like yourself. Again, just want to let our viewing audience know that, again, Danielle is well respected in her industry and in her profession. If you need somebody for immigration services, please reach out to her. Your website?
www.huntley, Huntley, immigration.com.
Great, and she'll soon be up on the walpolechamber.org directory as well. I thank you for being on the show today.
Oh, it's such a pleasure.
It was a great learning experience. And I thank you, our viewing audience, for tuning in. Again, it's all about getting to know, like, and trust professionals here in our environment or in our neighborhood, so you guys can make great buying decisions. Thank you. Be well. Be safe.